So before starting any prac, we have to have a quick look at the safety. So this is the risk assessment for it. So we'll just go down to the chemicals we're using. We are going to modify it as I am presenting it. We're not going to do the iron dissolving part. That's either going to be done for you or you'll be given a concentration. And so that chemical is safe. The phosphoric acid is quite concentrated. And so what we're going to find is for the concentrated acids, just going to dilute them and end up using, you'll see based on the numbers, we need 0.1 mole of acid. And so we're just going to use 3 molar and just sulfuric acid. We'll go through that through the video, and that will avoid taking up teacher distractions by the teacher having to dispense dangerous acids, and it'll remove dangerous acids. With these concentrations also, less than 10 mil, it's going to be more than that if it's repetitious in various groups. Same with the sulfuric acid. Even if it's 17.8, we're going to be using more than these volumes. So everything needs to be collected in the waste container and given to the tech to dispose of. All right. The next thing you need to check is, do you have enough chemical for the reaction? So you don't have to worry about the burette because you just keep adding more, but you need to worry about, is there enough acid? So what you're going to do is dissolve, either do this or be done for you, is the dissolving of the 1 gram of steel wool with this reaction. Now this reaction, we can use a metal reactivity series because we do have hydrogen and we do have iron. So the iron is going to lose electrons and be oxidized because it's further up here than hydrogen, and so hydrogen will be giving the electrons, gaining electrons, and this will be losing electrons. And so that reaction should work quite fine, and it's all 1 mole is to 1 mole. So doing the calculations here, if we do dissolve about 1 gram, we have this many moles. So I always do formula substitute units. Then I do the mole ratio. And so if I'm using 2 molar, I'm going to require about 9 mils. And because I'm putting 25 mils in there, that will be enough to dissolve it. Now the next issue is, do you have enough acid in there for this reaction? And the current method that we're going to use is 1 mil of 6 molar and 2 mil of 15 molar. We will change that to be safer, but we still have the same number of moles. And so that's 1:5 in this reaction here. So it's going to go from purple to colorless. And when the reaction's complete, there'll be a little bit of excess. And so you'll see a slight pink color. Now the permanganate here is unstable, but it has been titrated against a stable compound. And so that concentration should be in here somewhere. Here it is, 0.0196. Okay, so these unstable chemicals that you're using, they need to be titrated against a primary standard that is stable, and we know the precise concentration of it. So permanganate oxidizes, hydrogen peroxide decomposes, and things like NaOH and quite a few compounds are hygroscopic and attach waters to them from the air. So be very, very careful with what you're using. Most chemicals are not stable in the long term, the next day, and so do need to be titrated on the day to get their updated concentration levels. Now, is there enough acid? So working out the number of moles of each H plus given off by these compounds. This one doesn't actually fully dissociate as it stands, but in a reaction it will move to that to full dissociation. And so what I've worked out there is we need about 0.02 moles of H plus, and we're adding 0.1. So as long as we've got 0.1, we should be well and truly covered, unless we're using a concentration 3 times higher than the one that I've used in this experiment. So the first step is putting about 1 gram in a conical flask, and we're going to add the 25 mils of 2 molar acid, and it's going to be heated, and I've put a mixer in there and a stirrer, and that takes forever. Okay, so that's another reason why we're not doing this, is it takes like an hour, and those toxic fumes that you can see coming off there, even though the risk assessment doesn't do it, it does make your throat very uncomfortable. All right, and then once it's finished after an hour, it has to be rinsed and washed. All the gunk remaining, you can see the black gunk in the filter paper, needs to get removed. And then we need to know exactly what the volume is of that. So we put it into a volumetric flask and make it up to 250, and then we know the exact concentration. So you can see the meniscus looks about right once we get it parallel. Okay, the meniscus is just touching the line, quarter turns 20 times. Now to prepare, we have to rinse the burette. Often I skip the burette and pipette part that I'm showing you and assume it's clean. But to be proper, we should rinse it with distilled water first, in case someone's used it or it hasn't been cleaned properly. This is the only step where the water can go down the sink. After this, everything needs to go into the container right there. And so I'm rinsing that out with permanganate, making sure all parts of the lower part are twisted and turned so they're rinsed out. And then I twist it around, you can see like that, so the burette has all the surfaces covered, and just slowly pour that out into the waste container, like so. All right, so that is cleaning out the burette. Now make sure you lower it below eye height as you fill it, as you can see there, and then you ready to go. I thought I didn't need much, so I didn't put much in. So you'll see from the results I had to fill it twice, which is a bit silly. Should have filled it up. Now rinsing the pipette out, I just rinsed it out with distilled water just then. And now I'm actually grabbing this solution, the iron solution, whether that's from real steel wool or the ammonium ferrous hydrate sulfate, the hydrous ammonium ferrous sulfate or whatever it was in the risk assessment. That's what this one actually is right now. And I just rinse out the pipette with that. Okay. And now I am ready to prepare the sample. So now I'm collecting it. On the webcam, you can see the meniscus is not quite touching, I don't think. It might be touching because when you pull it up, sometimes the air bubble sucks it up a little bit more and it goes a little higher. So that could have been right on the meniscus. So this is 20 mils. Make sure you leave it there for a couple of seconds, that 45-degree angle. And so you know you've got all of the water expelled and that little tiny speck left is fine. Now I'm adding this 1 mil of sulfuric just there and the 2 mils of phosphoric acid. Now we're changing this method to be 20 mils of 3 molar so that it is a safer concentration for students to work with. Okay, now I'm just rinsing it around with water. Whenever you think something might get caught on the side, rinse it around with water to make sure it's in the solution. And you can see reading it there is difficult because it's dark. So sometimes you can read the top and the meniscus. But I did purposely choose a white one, which you can possibly see the meniscus with white readings. Now this is the rough titration. You can see how quickly it's just pouring out. You're just doing that to save time. You can see down there how quickly the thing's falling down on the burette. It's just going like 1, 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5. That's how quick it's going. And so you overshoot it on the rough just to get an idea. So you can quickly do it. This is being refilled now. Quickly do it so you've got an idea of what the proper result is. So you can see from what I've done that it's somewhere around 15.17 or 18 or something on the second day. Now this one I'm just adding only sulfuric acid to 6 molar, 8 mils of 6 molar. The phosphoric acid is meant to stabilize the iron and make it a clearer color. Otherwise it forms other complexes that are orange. But it is quite a dangerous concentration. So I just tried it without it. I think there is a slight more yellow tinge to it. But as you can see, my most accurate result in the end, because I keep overshooting at 1 or 2 drops and I'm getting closer and closer and closer, the phosphoric acid has no effect on the accuracy or the colors. So completely not necessary. So improving the method a bit there and we can get rid of the phosphoric acid. The other one is why not use other acids? So I'm just going to throw the HCl in there. And you can see that, as you'd expect from your solubility tables, that it is a yellowish color. and it gets more and more yellow. Will that affect the result though? Is an interesting and complex question. The questioning, the sulfate and phosphoric acids are very good because they're unreactive. And sulfate is the king of chemicals and the king of catalysts because it is stable. You can see here that it looks like it's finished, but then it goes back to being the light yellow again. And it just does that continually and continually and continually, and I go way over. And so the results, they do end up just going way over. It just keeps on going and going and going. So the HCl is not okay. It is an assumption to say that that's because of the standard reduction potential tables, because I can't smell or see any chlorine gas come off. And I think the questioning wants you to use that as a reactivity table. You really can't use that as a reactivity table because it's not a reactivity table. It's under a set of very specific conditions. They are experimental results, so they're that is what would happen. So if it was this, then without a doubt you wouldn't get it because you would only get iron reacting because it's more positive. The least negative, because this one has to get reversed. And you wouldn't see these ones at all. And if you did, you wouldn't worry about the chlorine turning to gas. You'd be more worried about the water going to oxygen, which is exactly what happens for this table if you put it into a electrolytic cell or a galvanic cell. It's got really nothing to do with a reaction. And they don't even coincide. If you have a look, I've done here the Hess's law, which is a Born-Haber cycle with a bit more complexity to it. And I've gone through all the different factors that go through causing a standard reduction. It doesn't take into account activation energy or entropy, but as you can see, the standard reduction tables are different to reactivity. So on the periodic table, this is the periodic table. So this should be the least, and this should be the most reactive. But that's not the case. In the standard reaction table, this is the most reactive, and it should be potassium. All right. So they are completely different things. You can't use standard reduction tables as reactivity. Okay. And you can do the calculations to work out which one is more likely. So anyway, needless to say, that's not a reactivity table. It's a standard reduction table, and you don't know what's going on in that conical flask. It seems more likely that this is a better reason for it. But the complexity of this is so great that I dare to sort of explain what might be going on, to be completely honest. You can have a few guesses at it, but don't use a standard reduction table. Last of all, when you finish, don't forget to rinse out the burette with distilled water a few times until it's completely clean. Otherwise, the permanganate will form crystals and block and destroy the burette, as will sodium hydroxide too. It'll react with the glass and that will just wreck it, and so it'll be clogged. Okay, so rinse it fully out. Lastly, just going through the calculations here, we've already mentioned, we got pretty close. I think 15.5, I was still one drop over. So I've taken the liberty of just reducing it by a drop rather than doing it 3 times. This is really, those titrations I took were for many different purposes. So I'll just use that number. And so known concentration of permanganate, so that's how many moles of permanganate I used. Using the mole ratios, therefore there must have been this many moles of iron in the 20 mils. And so the concentration in the 20 mils was this. The answer is actually this, so I can do a percent error, which is 5%. But if you were doing the iron and trying to work out the amount of iron, I did come up, this is fictitious now because that's the actual thing I did, so this might be completely wrong, but we'll do the calculations anyway. And so that means that the number of moles in the entire flask was this, the 250 ml flask, and so the total number of grams must have been just over 1. Now, when I measured it by chance, it was slightly over 1, so it does look like a good result, even though it's completely fictitious. And so the percent iron in steel was 99.2%. Now, you may get questions on this, and if you're doing QCAA, just be aware they don't define their terms properly, and so they often ask for reliability and validity because the majority of biology students, biology experiments don't control their variables. So validity and reliability are an issue. That's why they use statistics and hope for the best. So really they're looking for accuracy and precision. So the proper terms are here: low accuracy, low precision, low accuracy, high precision, high accuracy, low precision, and high accuracy and high precision. I've actually seen them. These are the classic diagrams. They're so confused. I'm starting to see this on the internet. The terms swapped out for each other. And they're using reliability and validity instead of accuracy and precision. So you just got to go to God mode, guys. You've just got to, I would put in brackets. I would give them what they're looking for, but put the correct term in brackets. If you're doing ATAR or QCAA, ATAR anyway, Queensland version of ATAR. If you're doing IB or any other syllabus, just use the correct terms in the correct way. Even if you're doing my class, use the correct terms in the correct way. All right. Also, as I mentioned before, people often use reactivity tables as standard reduction tables as reactivity tables. Just give them the answer they're looking for, and just say, chlorine might react if you put HCl acid in there with the iron, even though that's not the reaction, that's not the reason for it, and just say, but actually this is a reduction table, so it might not be the case. And the real answer is, I don't know. Okay, maybe it's reacting because you can see the yellow color experimentally, but you can't smell or see the chlorine gas, so it mustn't be doing that. So maybe it will cause a chloride insolubility reaction or some other side reactions that are stable, and therefore the permanganate is not reacting with all the iron, or it's reacting with the chlorine or whatever. Okay, hope that's helpful.